Woo! The Golden Stallion, the man of tomorrow, Savzu, the rated R radio star, here for you for a little, well, I don't even know what the hell I'm going to call this, but it's a little Patreon bonus content. But I guarantee the one thing I can call it is gold. It will be gold. I know that because I'm being joined by, quite frankly, one of my favorite people on planet Earth. And I don't say that very often. MK Lords.
Oh,
welcomed.
Shucks.
Hey, I got to call it like I see it. So welcome to Sovereign Tech again. It's been a while.
It has been a while. When was the last time?
Las Vegas.
Vegas. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right.
Me, you, Stephanie. There was that. Yeah, we did that one. It was a full episode of Sovereign Tech.
That was so much fun.
It was.
That was my
great.
favorite part of that conference.
Really?
Absolutely.
See, now talk about aw shucks. What the hell am I supposed to say to that? Jeez. Yeah, that was a great time. Actually, that episode had, tons and tons of reaction. People, thought it was very controversial. I can't believe what these people are saying. Oh shit, who let these women talk? Well, I don't know. I don't know if anybody exactly said
Never
that.
let your women talk.
Yeah, the Christians were onto something. No, anyway. But maybe this episode will be a bit of a repeat as far as controversial content goes.
I don't want to promise anything.
Yeah.
Too much.
That's true. You don't want to oversell too much. That's a good point. So anyway, MK, how the hell are you?
I'm doing great. So I got here earlier today from Florida. So I'm here visiting.
Yeah, for those that don't know, you're literally in studio with me. We are face to face
in real life.
Yeah, it's phenomenal.
Yeah.
So, and this is not your first time to New Hampshire, correct?
That's right. Yeah. So I've been up to New Hampshire a few times. Well, I have family who lives up here, but I've also been up for Pork Fest. And I just know a few people up here.
Sure.
Me and Stephanie, awesome friends of mine. So I'm here visiting for a while and then going to go down to Boston for a few days and then come back up and hang out more. So
yeah, we got some great stuff planned. I think we'll see how that all shapes up. So yeah, anyway, it's great to have you here. I generally I usually don't like admitting this, but I've said it enough times now. It doesn't really matter. I despise having guests unless they're in the room with me. Then it's like, yes, please, hey, let's have them all, fill the room with guests. I'm all for it as long as they're in the room with me,
Yeah, well, you have such an awesome studio set up. I wish I had a setup like this because I do my own podcast. And so far, I've had Stephanie on and she was there with me.
Yep.
But I've also had Angela Keaton on and she's remote and it's a little harder to do that. And
yeah.
I kind of prefer the kind of in-person interaction too. And it's just, it's easier to kind of see reactions and body language and stuff. And
it's late night, folks. Yeah,
it is late.
So your podcast, Iconosass. Now, I've mentioned this podcast on Sovereign Tech before. I'm already a fan. You're only, 3 episodes in? And this is something, you're doing though. It's you have new episodes planned, coming out, all the good stuff. Yeah. And
it's ongoing.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and I love it. The episode with the Angela she's one of my favorite. Talk about another favorite person on planet Earth. She tops my list very
absolutely.
easily. Yeah. And of course the episode you did with Stephanie was phenomenal. And your solo episode, I really enjoyed too, informative all the way across the board. So I can't recommend that enough. I'll put the link for that in the show notes if people want to check that out.
Awesome.
Yeah. So cool. You're here and everybody's having a good time and that's really what matters. And so we're going to do a little podcast here. Now, like I said, I'm not exactly sure how to title this because folks, we're going to play this one kind of loose. We're just like, yeah, whatever comes up and we'll just talk and chat. And, I think, I wouldn't want to speak for you, MK, but I think we're a couple of world-class shit talkers, quite frankly. And so
we were doing quite a bit of shit talking before this. And, so we were like, why don't we just turn this into a podcast?
Right.
So
Absolutely. So man, I almost felt like we could just start, I could just say a name and then the conversation could just run wild. But I don't know if I want to do that just right now. So I'm going to start it off with this wild question. Because, actually, MK, you're kind of amongst people that I actually kind of follow online. I have a lot of, I guess you would call social media metrics, but there's not a whole lot of people I actually pay a whole lot of attention to. You're one of those people that I pay attention to where when you post something, there's no lukewarm. There's no in the middle. Like, people either love what you had to say or they're absolutely incensed at what you had to say. You know, they go nuts. Did I represent that accurately?
Yes, I've been told that by a lot of people, actually. Yeah, so, and I mean, anything I'm posting, I don't really put stuff out there to get reactions.
Right.
I mean, I think a lot of stuff I post, I mean, I'm just speaking honestly about things, and that just really kind of riles people up. And
sure, truth hurts, right?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I guess some of the stuff I post is a little polarizing, but I'm okay with that. I mean,
all right. Well, then if you're all right with it, then let's just start this right out. MK, why do you hate men? Go for it, if you're up for it.
I don't hate them. I just find them mostly unnecessary.
I love that.
Oh, man. No, so it's kind of an interesting thing. I think some people may have this idea of me that may be a little bit inaccurate. Yeah, so it's kind of weird because in some circles, if you start standing up for women's rights or, you know, any type of minority people's rights or whoever, you get sometimes labeled as if you hate the majority or something, or
right.
You hate the other side of things. And I think it's kind of a weird thing. So, for instance, if you say you're a feminist, it's assumed that you hate men. And it's such a limited kind of worldview, and it's such a black and white way of thinking about things. Just because I'm, you know, may have, and I wouldn't even call, I mean, women's rights is not controversial.
Right, yeah.
Like it's kind of basic, basic stuff. But yeah, like you kind of, I've caught definitely a lot of shit. And I used to, I used to spend a lot more time kind of having long, drawn-out conversations with people and trying to find like a peaceful middle ground and like really, you know, spending a lot of time trying to explain certain concepts like feminism or, you know, whatever to people. And you end up wasting quite a bit of time on people who aren't trying to have discussions in good faith.
Sure.
And now that I'm able to identify those people a lot quicker now, I don't even waste my time with it. So yeah, maybe sometimes I come off a little bit glib or whatever. But I mean, my time is very precious and limited, and I don't have to waste it on anyone. And, I've spent a lot of time thinking about what I believe and challenging my own views on things. And, some people think.
No, I hear you. I mean, and it's funny too, right? Because like, I love the point that you're making. Look, you have, time is scarce. I only have so much. Why would I waste time with it? And the irony is that, often I think in your social circles, there are a lot of people that are big on, say, economics or things like this. And so they should appreciate the scarcity of things. And yet, if you don't give them the time of day, they instantly come out with some very choice words, perhaps towards you or something, or they think, oh, whatever. And it's ironic that they can't understand. Well, guess what? My time is not yours. It's mine. And I can only spend so much doing such and so much.
Yeah. You don't owe anyone anything.
Damn right.
So
I love it. Yeah. No. And I love the point you're bringing up. I mean, and this is always the easiest one. Whenever somebody hears the word feminism or something like that, they are like this idea that because you are supporting something, you instantly hate its antithesis. And I mean, the easiest analogy, not that proof from analogy is proof, but the easiest thing to bring up to people is that, well, just because I am like pro kid, like I'm about kids being treated properly and all this different stuff, that doesn't mean I hate old people, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
I mean it's a preposterous argument to say that just because you're for one thing means you're automatically against another. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense.
Well, and that's a good analogy because like child rights, that's an important topic, and
oh yeah,
you want to stand up for children's rights so that they can grow into healthier older people.
Right.
Like if you do, if you love children and you want to stand up for their rights, it follows that, yeah, you would care about older people too, care about people in general. And I think the same goes for women's rights or the rights of anyone else. I mean, the more rights people have, or the more freedom people have, really, to be who they actually are, the better it is for everyone.
Sure. So the statement that you hate men is wholly inaccurate. Is that, have I got that right?
Yeah, that's, I joke about it, the same as anyone jokes about anything, but yeah, it's,
yeah. I hear it. I mean, hell, I'll be the first person to come out and I'll even say it sometimes. I'll turn to Stephanie and be like, oh, fucking men, it happens all the time. So, and I'm a guy. Yeah. Anyway, I think people get a little, I think people take online life a little too seriously. What do you think about that statement?
Yeah, I think they do. And I think that they also take things a bit too personally. Also, I mean,
tell me more about that.
Well, so yeah, I mean, if you make kind of a broad statement about something, say, you can kind of keep talking about feminism. I've seen a lot of people take it as like a personal insult to them, or like a personal, like, well, what about my rights, and what about men, and like, what about, the struggles that they're kind of going through. And when someone reacts that way, it shows that to me, that they don't really know anything about feminism, because it's obviously something that cares about human rights,
right.
And actually is super beneficial to men, because it attacks gender roles, and it attacks things that hold men down, which throughout history, gender roles have been toxic to men and women. And it directly challenges, why do we have to fit into this binary way of thinking and existing?
Yeah, and I'll speak to that actually, because the only works that I could find, like when I started on my road to anarchism, shall we say, that questioned a lot of the cultural norms, where gender norms and cultural norms, intersect. I mean, that's a whole other conversation, but more directly cultural norms, things like marriage and a lot of these other ideas that I find can be potentially, it's fine if people want to do it, but potentially, they're not some kind of right. They're not some kind of like moral, ethical code that should be held up by everyone or accepted by everyone or something like this. And so a lot of the cultural norms that I find out there, the only anarchist books that I could find that questioned a lot of that stuff, even the deeper rooted stuff. And that's supposed to be what this is all about, is striking the root, was a lot of Emma Goldman's work.
I was just going to say, yeah.
Yeah. A lot of anarcho-feminism. I mean, that was the only, and because, I used to talk about feminism. I mean, I don't shy away from it, but I used to talk about it quite a bit more in Sovereign Tech's early history. And when people would ask me, why does this intrigue you? What the value do you find here? It's like, well, it's the only brand of anarchism that like really gets at the core of so much of what happens within culture, to say nothing of the gender roles and norms. I mean, certainly that's a whole, that's a huge part of it as well. And they're part and parcel, kissing cousins, maybe, if one wanted to use a funny term. So yeah, I agree. And that directly affects me as a guy, as a man. I mean, like, it's not even like, look, it's just the only train of thought out there that even tries to free you from these potentially very oppressive and even tyrannical, like socially reinforced, cultural constructs. And so, it's a wonderful thing and a supremely important field to study, in my opinion. And like I think we established, look, it doesn't mean that you're against men. In fact, quite the opposite. And now I want to ask you this, and if you have anything more you want to say, I mean, just let it rip. But like, some people, I think when they hear the term feminism, and I didn't plan on this being a whole conversation about feminism, but when some people say that, it's like, well, why not use the term humanist? I prefer the term humanist. I mean, like, when you hear somebody say something like that, do you have a general response for that?
Yeah. So while, I do broadly care about the greater human rights for all people, we are still at a stage in society where things aren't equal, and things are vastly unequal between men and women. In the U.S., maybe things are slightly better, or maybe significantly better if you compare it to the rest of the world. But I think people forget how recently women were considered property, especially in terms of marriage.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, if you go back to even the 1970s, women weren't able to get bank accounts, unless they had a husband. Until 1993, they hadn't struck down marital rape. It was, it wasn't considered rape if you were raped by your husband in many states until 1993.
I think there's a lot of people.
Not that long ago.
Yeah.
The 90s was not that long ago at all. And so I think people treat it as a battle that's already been won. And when they say, oh, well, we need to call it humanism instead of feminism, it disregards a lot of the work that feminists have done to further the rights of all people, really.
Right.
And it treats it as something, as a battle that doesn't need to be fought anymore, as if, we've already completed it. And to me, that's as ridiculous as saying, oh, well, racism is over just because we had a black president. It's silly.
Yeah.
And it's like, obviously we still have to have these, it's an ongoing conversation that we're having and an ongoing struggle. And while things are better, comparatively speaking, in this country, it's still really fucked up.
Sure.
In most of the world. I mean,
oh yeah. I mean, I've been airdropped in the Middle East, and I can tell you, like, feminism is still very much needed. The works of Emma Goldman still need to get spread around because, I mean, it's bad, in other parts of the world. And it's not
they kill women for being raped in other
Right.
parts of the world. Like, what the fuck? Like, are you trying to tell me, well, we shouldn't focus on, women's rights because things are kind of better in this country? I mean, and also people try to use that. I have heard this a lot too. It's like, oh, well, why don't feminists care about these women in other countries? And actually, feminists are the only ones who seem to care. And the people who are bringing that up don't do fuck all for anyone's rights. Like, they don't actually care. It's like, oh, okay, are you helping? Are you even donating to nonprofits that are helping women code, and helping them get out of these countries? Are you, fighting in any kind of way for those rights? Or are you just using this as a nice, tidy little point to make fun of this caricatured feminism that you found on Tumblr? As if that represents the whole of feminism. It's a huge school of thought, and it does frustrate me when I see people reducing it to something they saw, like a radical person they saw on the internet.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree with you completely. I mean, there's like, it is a huge, you're like you said, it's a huge school of thought. There's a lot of different brands of it, some of which even I, kind of disagree with. I think that like go.
There are many that are in conflict with each other.
Yeah, right. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, because you have sex positive, sex negative feminism. I mean, both of those, and those are obviously in conflict in a big way. So sure. I mean, that's a huge part of it. I agree. Yeah, I feel it's unfortunate that it just gets written off so quickly, and it seems to. I want to be careful when I use this word, but it seems to trigger a lot of people as soon as they hear the term. And if people would actually take the time to read up more on this stuff, I think that they would, they'd have a much better understanding. And that's really what it comes down to, is that, like, online, it's very hard to get nuance. It's like in a post or anything. And usually there's so much baggage that comes along with a post, that when nobody takes the time to really understand terms and understand that, like, just about any ism out there, ISM, is, has what could fill a library of Alexandria, of works and books and whatever else about it. Not that everybody can read everything, of course, but there's a lot there. It's not as simple as, oh yeah, no, I can just ignore this because it has the word feminine or female in it or something like that. So yeah, I don't know. I feel like that's just the nature of online interactions. I mean, how do you feel about, like, have you felt a need to maybe calm down? Not calm down. That sounds like way too judging. Have you felt a need to, like, slow down the amount of like social media interactions you have in general? I mean, how do you feel about that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I've definitely scaled back my participation in groups and arguments with people and all of that, because I find that it is a huge, it takes up a lot of my time, and I don't really feel that it reaches people in the ways that I hope it would. I don't know, like, I have mixed feelings about it, because I do still get messages from people where they're like, hey, I don't comment on your posts, but I just want to say, like, thanks for, talking about these things, because I feel like you're saying a lot of stuff that I want to say, but I don't want to catch a lot of shit for it.
Yeah.
And I'm I'm the type of person who's like, I don't care if I catch shit for this, like, bring it on.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do question. So like when having these discussions online, I think it's maybe good for bystanders and people who are kind of watching it, and like maybe they're not, maybe they don't participate as much, but they're like, oh, okay, I kind of see this conversation and I see how, things are going, and oh, okay, now I kind of understand the point that's being made. Now, I don't think it's as beneficial for the people that you're arguing with, because a lot of people don't approach things in good faith. And actually, this is a term I made up. And it's obviously meant to be tongue in cheek. And my friend turned it into like a macro image, like a little meme, and it caused a huge like shitstorm out of nowhere. And it totally, so it's a form of straw manning, and I called it man strawing.
I love this. Yes, I'm aware of this term.
I made this up. And I called it man strong because it's predominantly men who do this, where I'll make a point about something and then they'll start arguing with me about what they're assuming I said, or like they're not reading what my actual words. They're arguing against this caricature of the straw man, basically, of what I'm saying.
Right.
And I mean, obviously I inverted it because, I knew it would kind of like, rustle some people. And
yeah,
I was obviously being a little bit playful with it. It ended up really pissing people off. But yeah, I mean, this is a thing. This is a pretty common phenomenon with a lot of people who, women or people who appear to be feminine or appear to be women on the internet, is there is just a lot of bullshit that people bring out at you. And I mean, everyone catches shit on the internet if you have any kind of opinion, basically.
Yeah, if you have some non-mainstream opinion or something like that, sure.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, there can be a lot of dogpiling and a lot of just really dishonest conversations too, and it is a kind of waste of my time after a certain point, because it's frustrating, because it's like you can give someone the dictionary definition of something even and just be like, hey, this is what I'm actually saying, and they'll still they'll pull out these weird arguments, or they'll try to like tell you your argument, they'll try to explain your argument to you, and it's like, no, I'm pretty sure I know what I'm talking about here.
Yeah. Yeah, well, man strong, like, it's clever because it's just taking, I mean, I get why it incites people. Like, I understand because it says man. And so it's like, oh, it's against men. And, which, whatever. But I mean, you're just taking the term from the end of the word of straw man, and just putting it in front. I mean, it's honestly, it's brilliant. But you. Now you're bringing up something that I think a lot of people would be intrigued to hear defined. And then maybe we can change things up a bit in what we're talking about. But can you describe for me, because if I did it, I'd be engaging it.
I know what you're going to say.
Yeah. Could you describe for me what mansplaining means?
So this is another one of those terms. It's so loaded and it gets people so pissed off, but it's actually really simple. So mansplaining comes from this article from a few years ago, and it actually didn't even use the term. The term is derived from this article, but the article itself never used it, and it's called Men Explain Things to Me. And it talks about this author who is an expert in her field, and she's having a conversation with a man at this party, and he's explaining to her this book that he recently read that she authored. And she's like, she has to tell him several times that she is the author, and he's explaining the text of her book as if she doesn't know what she's talking about. So what mansplaining is, and a lot of people use it overly broadly, but what mansplaining actually is when someone is usually, and it's usually gendered, I mean, that's just the reality of it, is when a man is explaining to a woman what she is talking about when she is an expert in that field or is better read on the subject.
Okay.
And this happens constantly.
Oh, yeah.
It is unreal how often this happens in just about every topic, too. So, yeah, this is someone who, I mean, is, not near the level of, doesn't have near the level of expertise as the person that they're explaining this to.
Right.
So.
Yeah, no, I'll tell you, and maybe this is a little inside baseball, but since it's to the Patreon community, I don't think it's that big of a deal. But of course, Stephanie right now she's resting, and but sometimes, Stephanie is a full-on PhD, practically an MD as well. I mean, like she was halfway there and everything. I mean, she's just a brilliant woman. And I've seen posts that she'll make where, something to do with some scientific whatever. And yeah, some guy will come in and, well, actually, and just start like running all this stuff off. And it's like, motherfucker, you're talking to a PhD, not to appeal to authority or anything, but like, and it's not like Stephanie isn't well known. Like, I think just about everybody knows she's Dr. Stephanie Murphy.
She's a freaking doctor.
Yeah, right. And so it's...
and my favorite joke about mansplaining is, where does a mansplainer get his water from?
I don't know.
A well, actually.
Actually.
That is what they say. Well, actually.
Yeah.
And it's like, whenever I see those words now, I'm just like... okay, this dude's about to explain some shit to me, and I already know it. And like, this happened, when I was more active in kind of like libertarian stuff. I don't call myself a libertarian anymore, but I was active in libertarian stuff for almost 10 years. I mean, like I was, I'm familiar with the literature and the arguments, and I've done the activism. I've put in the time and stuff, and people would be trying to explain basic concepts to me, like the non-aggression principle or something. And I'm like, dude, like, you found out who Ron Paul was in 2012, and like, you're trying to explain shit to me. Hold up, son. Like, so
no, I hear. I mean, hell, when I got into this quote unquote game of libertarianism, I mean, you were already kind of a name. Like, I mean, you were like a thing. So, so yeah, right. It is ridiculous that they try and tell you, explain this stuff to you. But, yeah. Okay. So,
or when they try to tell me feminism is, socialism and panties or something, it's like, I'm pretty sure I've been studying this topic way longer than you.
How would you define feminism?
Feminism is socialism and a strap-on.
I love that. It's so good. That is so choice. Yes. Anyway, I think that's about all there is to say on that. So that's gonna. I think that just that little conversation that you and I just had is definitely going to rustle some jimmies, to say the least.
Good.
Yeah.
I need to be rustled.
Yeah. Well, you know what? You're dead on about that. And I try to bring up this, myself, I try to bring it up as well. And that is, like, let's have these debates, let's have these, this is how ideas evolve. This is how I think you get somewhere, as a human being, is that you have this, kind of crucible where you're just constantly hammering out these ideas.
Which I love being challenged on stuff. I want to be called on my bullshit. Just do it cleverly and do it well. Like, don't give me the same old boring arguments that I've heard a million times.
Right.
Or like, if you're going to insult me, be creative about it. Like,
right. Yeah. To be good at it. Yeah. I hear you. So anyway, how about we switch it up? Yeah. Unless, did you have anything else you wanted to say?
No, I think that.
All right. So here's something that I think you can speak to far better than I can. I have like almost nil as far as experience goes. Sure, I can read a lot. But, there's some truth to that old thing about street smarts, I guess. And something that a lot of people with me that they're always kind of surprised by is that, and as I always caveat with, I don't care what people do, like they can put into their bodies whatever they want. They can rock and roll. And there's certain groups of people, I guess I could say, that I'm a little more, sympathetic and empathetic towards and into why they engage in these sorts of things. But yeah, I'm pretty much a teetotaler. Like I don't mess, with really any kind of drugs or anything like that. Again, I don't care that people do, that's totally fine. So I get asked a lot about this, and anytime that like I get these kind of questions, I bring up my concerns, not concerns that there's something inherently wrong, but usually it comes down to bad marketing. I think like a lot of times people will bring up, well, this drug will cure, will give you 10 years worth of therapy if you take this now. And, when I hear claims like that, I mean, that's what I go after. Not saying that what it does, that it doesn't actually do something or that it's somehow harmful or whatever, just that the marketing around it, can be very harmful. But yeah, psychedelics is a hot topic on Sovereign Tech. I get a lot of people asking me, to talk about it here and there. Look, I just don't have the experience. I mean, I really don't. Like, I can talk about some historical aspects of it. I can talk about what makes it up, all these different things. But as far as actual use, like I don't have anything to say on it, and it's not because I think of them negatively either. It's just I don't have anything to say. So, I mean, give me, and this is a huge question, but like, give me your thoughts. Psychedelics, what do you think? Helpful, harmful? 40-foot view, the whole thing. I mean, if you're comfortable with that.
So this is a huge topic.
Yes.
You're totally right about that. So, and I have a lot of experience with them. I mean, they were like my favorite thing. They were my favorite thing for a long period in my life. And so when I wanted to, I think when I first heard of psychedelics, when I first heard it was a thing, and like, the programs in school where they're telling you like, don't do this stuff. Like,
yeah,
it's
which is
bad,
guaranteeing you're going to do it.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
Those were always the most interesting sounding things because I love testing my mind. I love testing the limits of my mind and like wondering, what can I do with that? Like, how can I change it? How can I, and, in a healthy way, but I've done it in unhealthy ways too,
okay.
Obviously. But it was always something that I found really intriguing. So I got the opportunity to do that mostly in my late teens and early 20s. I ate a lot of psychedelics, and I will say that they helped me break through some things that were really, that I was having a lot of trouble with. So I've had a pretty traumatic life.
Sure.
Just like a lot of childhood trauma, and things like that. And they really helped me break through a lot of that trauma. Not in the same way that therapy does. I don't think they're a substitute for therapy. I think a lot of people use them as a substitute for therapy. And I think they're a good start to helping you recognize that you have the tools to work through your trauma, like within you, within your own mind.
So it opens up possibilities. Is that what you're saying? Okay.
Yeah. And also it helps you accept yourself. If you have a lot of trauma that's, a lot of guilt or shame about things that maybe weren't your fault, or things that had happened to you, I found them very helpful for that, specifically MDMA and LSD. Those were like my favorites.
Okay.
It takes you very deep into your own mind and into places that I think are very difficult to access when you're sober. Now, some people would debate that you still can find those places and you still can get to them, in your sober mind. And I think that's definitely possible. And I think there are certain forms of therapies that can kind of do that and kind of, give you those kind of similar feelings. But yeah, I mean, I found them to be really, really helpful. And even, I would say, even became a bit of an evangelist for a while. With it, I kind of got a little too into them.
It was Laurel Canyon too. That's what Where's Zappa?
Yeah, and it was, oh God. Well, so it was funny. I listened to so much Zappa.
Oh, yeah.
Like so much before I even did psychedelics.
Sure.
I was a huge, huge Zappa fan. But I was also a huge, I read a lot of books. I loved fiction. And so I just have always constantly used my imagination. But yeah, so I had a lot of really awesome experiences and then a few really scary ones too. Ultimately, unless you're testing things, you don't always know what you're getting. And I mean, let's be real, like it's still drugs. Like you can't test everything, and prohibition causes you to sometimes get things that you were not expecting to get. And that's really not good. And it's also really not good if you're not in a controlled environment. I mean, I really like, maybe some of your listeners are familiar with MAPS, and they're trying to do a lot of research into psychedelics, but
this is an organization.
Yes. Yeah. And I think there's more research coming out showing that they are really beneficial in a controlled, like, clinical setting. I would always try to make sure to do them with people that I trusted, in a safe area, and, stay hydrated, and, have like a safe room or a safe place that you can go to if you start having a bad trip. Because ultimately what a bad trip is a lot of your own internal baggage kind of coming through, and like you're confronting it. This was actually something I really liked about psilocybin, was I was able to confront a lot of these kinds of demons that I had, and also like confront them, and also realize that I didn't need them holding me back from anything, and that I could get through them and, become a stronger person and kind of come out of that. And it's very hard to describe if you haven't done them, I guess. But like I said, it's not a substitute for therapy. And I think, if you are dealing with a lot of trauma, I would not suggest just eating a bunch of acid or doing a bunch of ayahuasca and just kind of like, using that as a substitute. And this idea that you can use it as a substitute or as a shortcut for self-improvement or therapy, I think is really misleading.
Right.
And I really don't recommend it. And I actually, as much as I like doing them, I went through a period of extreme stress in my life, and I stopped doing them altogether because I found that they were not beneficial to me anymore.
Okay. Yeah. So I have some questions like on this, and there's like zero judgment in these questions, like, and some of it's playing a little bit of devil's advocate here and there. One is that, well, like, so I guess one thing I want is your response to, now you brought up psilocybin, and you mentioned ayahuasca and some of these other ones. Now, this is part of the bad marketing that I was talking about earlier, where people will claim these quote unquote shamans, and emphasis on the quote unquote, they like to claim that, well, this has been done for thousands of years. This has been like this is some great secret to unlocking the human mind and all this stuff. And when they start making that marketing claim of it being for, thousands of years, the issue I have with that instantly is that based upon how much they're saying, now, I mean, and I think your description is of what these things can do, I think is cautious and conservative in a very refreshing way. And that's important for like people to, get a little bit of a reality check here, because reality might check out for a little while.
I've made some bad mistakes with them.
Right.
And they are not for everyone. And you cannot assume that just because you had a good experience that someone else is ready for that experience or will have the same type of experience as you.
All right. We might revisit part of that. So yeah, like based upon what I get told the stuff does for people, like I would expect South America to be this paradise. Like they should be living like it's the United Federation of Planets down there or something, because if they took because apparently they've been doing psilocybin and ayahuasca and ibogaine or who knows whatever else for, thousands of years. So then, where's the paradise? When in fact, in many ways, it appears to be quite the opposite. But then, I'm not hearing anything from you claiming like that this is helpful because of some, like, you're not appealing to history in any way. Not that I'm hearing. And I mean, what if you heard somebody saying that, well, what would your response be? Like saying, oh, you should take this because, this has been helpful for thousands of years.
Well, so these compounds have existed in nature for a very long time, and people have used them for thousands of years. Some of these things like psilocybin mushrooms have been around for a very long time, and other compounds too. But that's not really, I mean, that's not really a great way to sell it. That's not a reason to do it.
Mm-hmm.
just because, I mean, lots of things that are not great have been around for thousands of years, you know,
right.
that are not beneficial to humanity whatsoever. And I have a big issue with the shaman thing too. I think most of those are scams. I think they're totally taking money from, middle class or rich Westerners looking for an experience to kind of enhance their, boring life or whatever. And, they're totally being swindled. And the thing is, you don't need, it's kind of like the argument of like, oh, well, we need popes and holy men to, understand this religious text. Mm-hmm. I get a similar thing. It seems very unnecessarily religious. But yeah, that's, to me, I think a better argument, and I think this is what MAPS is working on, is what it does to your brain, like what it's
right.
doing to the chemicals in your brain, because that really can't be replicated with therapy. And while therapy is super helpful, it can't be replicated in the same way. It's literally, it chemically alters your brain for a period of time, whether
sure.
it's like 20 to 30 minutes with DMT or like 12 hours or something with some of these other things. And yeah, that is really difficult to replicate. And, I want to see more data come out about it, because I have a lot of anecdotal evidence about it, about
right.
how great they've been for me. And then also how not so great they've been, but then also for other people too. And that's not really, if we want to destigmatize the use of them, if people want to see them legalized and used to help things like PTSD, which I absolutely believe some of them are very helpful for PTSD and working through trauma, then I think we really need data on it, and we need to prove it.
Yeah.
Aside from like I personally believe that because I've personally experienced it, that's still not really enough.
Right. Yeah. Now, okay. So that's a perfect lead in, because now I think one of the more popular ones that gets talked about to treat PTSD, and there has been some degree of research done on it, would be MDMA. Do I have that understood correctly?
Yes.
Okay. So like here's, I'm just going to express like a little annoyance that I like, and I was in the military. I get it. Like, I understand. I've had to help out other, fellow, I don't even know what terms to use anymore, because I don't like to say servicemen or any kind of crap like that. But I've had to help, fellow people that were in the military, that have gone through that and all that stuff. And I'm aware like of the just, seemingly almost magical ability that MDMA has had for some of these people. And it really is something to behold. The annoyance I have isn't with that. The annoyance I have is that, like, I feel like a lot of people, and I'm curious what you think about this. And this is more, this comes down to more of that marketing and more of like the social issue around it, is that, like, a lot of people, I think, that just want to take MDMA and have a good time. And again, I have no problem with that. Like to use this, like these really, potentially real benefits. I mean, like, I've seen them, so I want to kind of say they're real, but whatever. I wait for the science to come in before I speak 100% on things, or before I speak confidently. But I mean, how do you feel about that? Do you feel like that there's a lot of people that do that sort of thing where they say that, okay, yeah, this has this benefit for these people. Isn't that amazing? We should all take it. Like, I mean, how do you, I mean, I'm hearing from you that, or I think I'm hearing from you that, like, this isn't for everybody. Have I got that right?
Yeah. And there are even differences between different psychedelics. Like, acid is a very different experience from MDMA.
Sure.
And I actually think that MDMA is something that I would say would be easier for a broader amount of people to take safely in small doses and greatly benefit from, and have a more kind of standardized reaction, just because it tends to have a pretty similar reaction among people. As far as people saying, oh, well, you should take it because it can cure PTSD. First of all, I don't think it can really cure PTSD. It was tremendously helpful for me, though.
Sure.
It's definitely one of my, I think it's been one of the most beneficial psychedelics I've done. But I also don't think there's any problem with people just using it to party. And I think people
right.
should be honest about that like it's a drug. What it does to your brain chemically is it just floods your brain with serotonin, and it just feels really good. And we can be okay with that. And like, I think what it's really good for is bonding with other people and working through maybe conflicts you have. Like they were actually using it for in family counseling in the 70s. They were doing trials with it, and I could definitely see that, because what it does is it allows you to reach a state of vulnerability with other people that is sometimes very difficult to do. These barriers kind of come down, and you can be kind of refreshingly honest with each other and have like these deep emotional connections.
Right.
And I think more people could benefit from that. But again, like, I do want to be super cautious about, saying, well, everyone should just do MDMA and there would be world peace or something like that, because there wouldn't be. And there needs to be data to kind of back this up. And
yeah,
then,
I mean, a lot of people sell it that way. Like, they really do.
They do. Yeah.
And I, again, that's the marketing. I hear that and I go, ooh, wait a second. You got a lot of proving to do before you can make that claim.
Yeah. And I mean, and again, it doesn't, you can have these really positive experiences, but unless you're willing to put in the hard work afterwards to kind of become a better person or something, like it's great if you can accept yourself and work through guilt and shame and stuff like that, but unless you're really willing to put in the hard work afterwards and maybe get real therapy and change your bad habits and change how you treat people and things like that, then you're not going to benefit from those kinds of lessons that you've gotten a glimpse into by using it.
Sure. Yeah. And I think you touched on something else that like would make me feel a little more confident in people's real desire to use these things to actually heal, particularly ones like MDMA and some others. Like, I don't often hear people, they're like, oh yeah, I want to cure this, and so I want to take MDMA or something, but they never talk about wanting to do it in an environment like maybe with a therapist. Now I get it. It's kind of illegal, right? And
right.
so
it's super illegal.
Yeah, so you can't really have like you can't go to the office.
Do not go out and buy MDMA.
Yeah, right? Yeah. So I mean, you can't just go to somebody's office, and they're an MDMA practitioner or something, right? So I understand that, but like I'm a little concerned that where is the line where it's not self-medicating? I mean, it is self-medicating, and not to say that that's always a bad thing. But I guess I don't even know how I want to describe this, but just that, I don't know. Sometimes it feels really off to me that I think people are trying to justify something else that they want to do. And I can't really explain it very well. So, and especially
you think that maybe people are using it as a crutch for avoiding dealing with something, like maybe with other substances.
Yeah, maybe something like that. I guess part of what I'm feeling is that there's like, I think it's wonderful, like you're describing with the family counseling, how it could bring out this honesty, right, and break down a ton of these barriers. And oh, do I get that? Because you've got, we live in a culture. There's a lot of cultures that are just so, oppressive to people's real feelings, and just don't let them come out. And everybody's just a bottle, and that's such a shame. But I get it that the thing is that I don't know that everybody's being completely honest about why exactly they want to do it. Like you said, I thought that was brilliant that you just, that you said, look, if you just want to party using that stuff, then just go party and go do that. And I think that's the thing, is I'd like people to just admit to me when that's what they want to do. Don't sell it to everybody else like they're your parents and you have to explain, oh, well, no, actually I heard it does this, and so it's okay, mommy. Like
yeah, you don't have to attach this kind of lofty ideal to it to just say you want to have fun. And that being said, I mean, compared to really though, it's one of those things compared to other things that are legal that people do to just party. I would say MDMA is far less harmful and just, way better for your mental state. I would say, obviously you can abuse anything and you can do too much and stuff like that. But I mean, compared to something like alcohol, I mean, it's a much better way to connect to people and have like I would say a safe, even like wholesome good time. I know that sounds weird talking to use that term, like talking
Wholesome.
about drugs, but like it's compared to like what can go wrong with alcohol. Like I don't know. And again, that's not all experiences across the board, but that it is illegal, I think, is really ridiculous. Because while anything can be abused, psychedelics in general are not very habit forming. They're safe from like a physical standpoint. You can't overdose on them. Well, okay, you can't overdose on MDMA. You'd have to be careful about that. But yeah, with the dose that you would take to have a decent trip, it's totally non-lethal, and it's, you know, easy on your body, even much better than alcohol and all that. And again, I'm not trying to endorse anyone doing drugs or don't do illegal stuff. But yeah, it is kind of ridiculous that it's because it's been so stigmatized that I think people come up with all of these weird justifications for trying to use it when maybe they're just trying to have a good time.
Right.
So, and you know, there shouldn't be as much of a stigma attached to it.
Yeah, absolutely. So now I guess this gets into a couple of my questions you've already answered. I guess maybe I don't know if it'd be the last one, but the last one in my mind right now is that, like, do you see, I'm reminded there was a quote by John Lennon. I suppose I could punch it up, but, and for him, it comes off very much as a judgment, a lot kind of harsher than I actually intend to be. I have no intention to be that harsh. But he kind of said that, like, what is so wrong with the world that we need these, like, he called them accessories, and he was referencing drugs and all that stuff. Like why, you know, he was kind of saying, why isn't the human mind enough? And I'm not saying I agree with him, but I'm curious, like, can you imagine, as someone that is appreciated, had a lot of experience, you know, using all these, like, is there a, how to put this? Is there a way of living? No, that's not the right way to put it. This is tough. Okay. So see, I never talk about this stuff. So, is there a way, like, can humans live? Like, is there a future? Maybe that's the best way to put it. Is there a future where humans would never need to take this stuff to heal? Or is that, would you consider these things to be quintessential, like to really experiencing the entirety of the human condition? Does that make sense? I know I'm speaking very broadly, and that's okay if it doesn't make any sense, because I do that to myself all the time.
I think I see what you're getting at. Well, everyone's different, and I think as long as there's so many fucked up things in the world, and that's going to continue to exist, and until we find a better way of caring about each other and just, you know, being better people to each other, then I think for some people it's highly beneficial for them to have those experiences so that they can learn to accept themselves and, you know, learn that they have the power within them to overcome any kind of trauma that's happened to them.
Right.
But I do think that it's not necessary for some people. And I think some people can find other techniques that work just as well, whether it's through maybe meditation and yoga, or going through types of therapy like cognitive behavioral therapy or EMDR or something like that.
Right.
So, I mean, yeah, I don't know. That's a hard one. I think I see what you're getting at. And I mean, I know that
Take your time.
I'm definitely grateful for the experiences that I've had, and I would do it all again.
Right.
Absolutely. Right. Hands down. I mean, you know, I didn't for a while. I eventually got to know my own mind so well that I knew, and I still know when I'm not in a good mindset to engage in those substances.
Right.
There are definitely periods of time where, and I feel like I've learned enough lessons from that, and those kinds of little seeds that were planted in those experiences, I've found other ways of growing and hashing out through non-chemical means.
Sure.
So yeah, everyone's different. I think a lot of people could benefit from just more love and understanding in general. Like that's really the root of it. That's, I think people have probably pretty similar experiences on these substances, and you kind of come around to pretty similar conclusions. And I mean, that's really what it is. It's like, how can we find a way of treating people better? And it would be great if we didn't need these substances to realize that. It seems like like an obvious kind of thing, but I guess some people need a little assistance sometimes.
Sure. And I can appreciate all that. So, again, they're like really zero judgment here on any of it. And yeah, but I appreciate that honesty and candor on all that. I mean, I think that that's all solid points, to make in the matter. Again, I have zero experience to talk about it. I generally don't, because again, I don't have any experience,
Well, and it's also one of those things, people can get a little evangelical about it, and there shouldn't be any judgment on the other direction too. Like I don't think of people as less woke or enlightened, because they haven't done or don't want to do psychedelics. Mm-hmm. The brain is such a powerful tool, and you really there's so much within it that you can learn to navigate and control and advance. I'm not even sure the words I'm looking for here.
It's getting really late, folks.
It is getting really late, but yeah, there are plenty of people who don't need to do psychedelics to come to the same conclusions.
Right. Well, I think that's a great kind of point to really end on with that. As much I'd love to hear. You've got to have some amazing stories as far as with psychedelics.
Oh yeah,
I can only imagine. There's got to be some doozies.
Jesus found me one time.
Oh boy.
Maybe for another show.
Yeah. Oh man. I could just picture it's got to be amazing. So all right. Well, let's see. We're about an hour in. How are you feeling?
Shoot. Yeah, I'm getting pretty...
All right, you're getting tired. Okay, so I want to end off this doesn't have to be long. I want to end off with kind of one last question, and I think it kind of ties in with, well, maybe it kind of ties up everything that we talked about a bit here. Now, would you describe yourself? I appreciated that you said you don't call yourself a libertarian anymore, and I steer clear of the term as well. I really do. So now, how about the term anarchist? How do you feel about that?
Oh yeah, I would say I'm an anarchist. Yeah, I've been using that term to describe myself probably like as long as even before I was a libertarian, I would use that term.
Sure.
So, yeah.
Well, you've got to see, boy, like I'd love to just interview you because I know you've got a wild history, not crazy as in bad, just a wild history with a lot of different, I think, ideologies and groups and all that. So a lot of that would just be fascinating to hear about. But okay.
Would it be messed up to say libertarianism is white nationalism and bow ties? That's a bit much. I take that back. That's me just being an asshole. Sorry.
Let it rip. This is a very quotable show.
No, some of my very closest friends are fighting for the label back, and I
No,
can
it's true.
respect that.
Yeah, very
So,
good people.
The best people I know. So
yeah, absolutely. So okay, now so here's the second part to that. So you consider yourself an anarchist. I think a lot of people see the great goal of anarchism is for the entire planet to be in anarchy. You know, we'll have an anarchist paradise, or what some people call lib-para, right? Libertarian paradise. We won't mention those people, but no, but do you think that one day in the future, and I can give you my answer first if that helps, but you know, one day in the future that there's actually like that planet Earth is going to be this anarchist, you know, paradise. So like everybody's going to be on board with anarchism. My answer quite simply is no way. No, it's never, you're going to have pockets here and there maybe, but you're never going to have an entire planet of anarchism. It's just not happening. But your answer, even if you say yes, totally valid. Go for it.
hell no.
Do you want to expound on it at all?
No. Well, so, okay. For me, and I call myself, I would say I'm more of a philosophical anarchist, because I'm also concerned with how things practically work in the world. Like,
Sure.
what are workable solutions in the place that we're living at now? We can't pretend that we live in this hypothetical future scenario. I don't get to live in that reality,
Right.
you know, in my life.
Yeah.
So I have to deal with a lot of real shit all the time. And as much as I would like to live in a world where, you know, people can have as much freedom as possible and they're also decent people and treat each other well, that's not the world that I get to live in. So yeah, there are going to be a large percentage of people who always want to be ruled over and want people to make decisions for them, because they don't want the responsibility of living with total freedom and self-responsibility. And I would even argue many anarchists don't really have that figured out yet. They don't want to take responsibility for their actions, and they're trying to use anarchism as a way to be a shitty person without having to deal with any repercussions for it. So, and also, I don't want to force my beliefs on anyone. I'm completely against that. As much as I want to be free and don't want anyone to, you know, prevent me from being the person that I want to be. You know, I like there are a lot of people who think that they can raise their kids to be a certain ideology,
Right.
You know, and they're like, oh, I'm going to raise, you know, I'm going to have anarchist babies. And like what you're doing is that has nothing to do with anarchism. That's just another form of control. You're trying to control your child with what you think is the right ideology. And if my ideology changes, like, who knows? It could. I mean, I want to keep myself open to that possibility. I don't think it's going to.
Right.
Because I'm an anarchist in pretty much every sense of the word, you know, in all aspects of my life. I believe in, you know, full accountability, full responsibility, and then having as much freedom, you know, as I can, and respecting people and, you know, living by, you know, my word, basically. But yeah, I mean, it's like, I just don't see it really ever happening. There are too many different types of people in the world for everyone to even get close to what I think is, you know, my preferred version of anarchy.
Right.
Whatever arbitrary anarchy that is. It's not very anarchist to want everyone to think the same way I do and believe the same things I do.
Yeah. No, I agree completely, like across the board. That was so well said. Yeah, I mean, I've always made the point, you know, my anarchism can't help but flow through, you know, pretty much everything I do. But you know, my goal with anything that I do, even when it's related to anarchism, is just to maximize choice. That's in my opinion, if there's ethics, it's like, it's the only ethical thing you could possibly go for, is just to give people as many options as possible, or, you know, have them available, I should say, not give it to them. And Yeah, and that's it. That's like, to me, that's the best you can do. You know, anything else is, it's forcing shit on people, you know, and I like your point about, you know, with children. I mean, that's like trying to have Christian babies, you know, it's like, well, guess what
Good
happened?
luck.
Yeah, the pastor's daughter every time, you know.
Oh, God, they're the worst.
Right. You know,
They're the
that's not going to be a Christian. So,
they're fun to party with.
Absolutely. Right on. Yeah. So yeah, very well said. And again, I completely agree that, yeah, it's just not going to happen. And so, you know, I mean, for me, yeah, again, maximize choice. And, you know, if you can find a few people in your life that that maybe agree with you or have similar aims and goals, then hang with them. And that's freedom, baby.
Yeah. And there's freedom in letting go that, you know, other people have to think the same things that you do. And
sure,
just letting go that there has to be this ideal world eventually.
Right.
There doesn't have to be. Like, that's so liberating to just know, like, hey, you know, it's okay. Like, it doesn't have to work out the way I think it should.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think a lot of people, like, where they get bent out of shape is in that they think that, but if they're not thinking my way, they're going to force me to do something else. And like, no. You know, like within anarchism, I mean, it's not anarchism if you don't have the option of expressing it in a million different ways, none of which requires force. You know, it's just not there. It's not necessary. So I think people get they overblow those kind of situations. So yeah. So anyway, hour and 5 minutes.
Dang.
How are you feeling?
I'm feeling good.
Okay. Is that like a good ending spot, you think?
I think so.
All right.
I think, man, we covered some good stuff.
Yeah. I had a good time. So, and
awesome
I got to
show.
talk about, I haven't talked feminism forever. So that was not, it hasn't been forever.
Covered all of my favorite topics, I think.
Feminism, psychedelics, and
hating men. You know,
yeah, we started. It's perfect. Yeah, so
you know, like, you're gonna get emails. Why does MK hate men though? For real? Like,
yeah. Oh, the mansplaining will start off, or the man-strawing, or whatever. Yeah.
Don't you think that wasn't fair?
Yeah, I'm sure it's going to happen. But you know what?
I'm actually really nice in person.
Yeah, it's true.
I come off like on the internet as a bit intense, but I'm real nice. I'll come to your house and cook you food. Okay, no, not really, but
wait a minute.
If you come to my house, I will cook you food.
Are you going to cook the jambalaya though?
I really want to, yeah.
All right, we got to do that.
Yeah.
All right.
I'll cook Brian and Stephanie some jambalaya and cornbread.
This is so exciting. Gluten-free. It's going to be phenomenal.
Gluten-free. Totally gluten-free.
I love it. So anyway, MK, thank you so much for being on.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah. Obviously, you're welcome anytime. Anything that I'm running, you're always welcome. So anyway, that is it, folks. Like I said, I'm not sure what the hell I'm going to title this yet, but this is just a little extra bonus content for you. I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of emails, like you said, MK, and we'll deal with them as they come. So there you go, folks. I'll see you on the other side.
You just experienced Sovereign Tech. Go to sovereigntech.com, that's SOVRYN tech.com, and connect with us there. Find links from today's show and catch our podcast feed. Sovereign Tech is copy heart. Copying art is an act of love, and love is not subject to law. So please share the show however you like. Welcome to the evolution.